Yeah, you must come in. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Let's sit away. The man will come and sit himself in the middle. Yeah, come on in.
Just come around that side, I think.
Yeah.
This is like a trick entrance to see if you can handle it.
No, we're not starting. We have planned the music. We're not starting yet. Good morning.
There you go. You're on. I'm off too.
Don't say anything about cats.
Good morning. You know, in my culture, when I say good morning, you know, there should have been an ululation and happiness and, you know, to appreciate the day. We're just waiting for the mayor and the deputy mayor. They are on their way. And then we'll start with the program. Okay, thank you for your patience.
Stupid thing. chair's higher. The middle chair is higher.
Good morning once again. Good morning, the travel and tourism family. Good morning. That's good. That's very good. Welcome to WTM Africa 2019. And I hope that you will have a wonderful, fruitful discussions, and you'll make some business deals, and you'll walk away, with new partners. You'll walk away with new clients, and you'll be able to service them, bring them to your country, wherever you may be from, whether you're from the continent of Africa, Asia, Europe, the Americas, wherever you're coming from, Australasia, you're welcome in South Africa. We have a very tight program, and I will introduce those that are here, in front, of you. First of all, my name is Tshifhiwa Tshivhengwa, and I am the CEO of the Tourism Business Council. I will be managing the program this morning, and I will make sure that we finish on time, and I will make sure that we get, the output that we need to get. I will introduce each one when they come on stage to give their speech, but before we get to that, we're in the city of Cape Town, and we do know that politically every city or every metro will have the leadership. And with us today, we have the Honorable Mayor of Cape Town in our presence. He will be giving us the opening address of the WTM. Mr. Mayor, I don't need to welcome you to your city. I'm sure you will be welcoming us to your city. It's a pleasure having you here. We've got we've got the MMCs. We have other politicians from other provinces who are in the leadership of the tourism industry. And I want to say that all industry leaders, all leaders from the public, offices, all CEOs, presence from different countries, from all over South African structures of tourism industry and government, all protocol observed. Welcome to WTM Africa 2019. Without taking too much of time, we have a program this morning that will be very tight, as I said. We're going to move, with speed in delivering what we need to deliver in opening this prestigious event. And I would like to call upon the Mayor of the City of Cape Town to give us the address. Mr. Mayor.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. And to all of you, the honored guests from all over the world, it's a pleasure to be your host. It's a pleasure to welcome you in our beautiful city, beautiful Cape Town. And I also want to confirm any other politician from any other province, MMCs that might be here, you are most welcome. And also our local politicians, local councillors, James Voss and Ander, and others, thank you so much. It's really an honor for us as the City of Cape Town to be hosting World Travel Market Africa for the 6th occasion. We are pleased to welcome all the delegates, members of the tourism industry and business buyers to this beautiful mother city. Platforms such as WTM Africa provide us an opportunity as Africans to share with the world what we have to offer, not only as a city or as a country, but also as a region. We are looking forward to sharing ideas with our counterparts on how to continue building a globally competitive tourism and business destination. As Cape Town, we are looking forward to sharing with the rest of the world, how we work with the tourism industry, our residents and business. I'm sure many of you are aware that Cape Town found itself in the midst of a drought, and that had a knock-on effect for the local tourism industry. But I'm standing here today to tell you that we have turned the corner by working together. Just 3 weeks ago, the ratings agency Moody's changed its rating of the city of Cape Town to stable due to its groundbreaking management of the drought crisis and its efforts to avert day zero, and I think you're all well aware of that. Cape Town has emerged from one of the worst droughts in our history as a leader in water resilience. In 2 years, we reduced our water consumption from over 1 billion litres per day to less than 600 million litres per day currently. The tourism industry, especially our hotels and guest houses, came on board to drive sustainable practices and encourage visitors to get on board with a Save Like Local campaign and still enjoy the best that Cape Town has to offer. We want you to come visit us. Cape Town must be on your itinerary as a leisure destination of choice. I just hope it is indeed the case. This is the same attitude we have placed on implementing our event strategy, which has led us to being named world's leading festival and event destination at the World Travel Awards in 2018. This accolade is a testament to our diverse offering, the dedication of the City of Cape Town's officials, local business, and our tourism partners. This recognition means more organizations, travelers, and business will see us as an appropriate location for high-profile events which bring people to our shores. The recognition that accolades such as this one brings will help drive tourism and also job creation, as the hospitality industry employs thousands of people. It is a sector that continues to show potential for ongoing growth. Over the last decade, the sector has annually contributed between 2% and 3.5% to the local economy. Currently, the tourism economy in Cape Town employs around 150,000 people, making it the sector with the highest growth and employment potential. My Mayoral Committee member for Economic Development, James Voss, here in front with us today, and I am sure many of you will get to interact with him because he is passionate about tourism and growing our economy. I will say this again. Come to Cape Town. We have a lot to offer you in the form of leisure, scenic beauty, and the world-class infrastructure that enables business growth. And if I could have my way this morning to say, Honorable Master of Ceremonies, if you are not going to pause at some stage during your event today, tomorrow, and whenever to go visit some of our scenery, Table Mountain, our wine estates. Oh, that would be something to visit some of our wine estates. Then you can't say you indeed did visit Cape Town. That will be a sin not to do that. And with the increased number of direct flights that we have secured to various African cities over recent months, this also means easy access to our visitors to visit the rest of Africa too. Since the inception of the Air Access Initiative in 2015, the team has secured 30 new direct flights and 18 expansions, bringing much more ease in coming and in connecting to Cape Town. The Air Access team works hard to establish new direct flights and re-establishing previous connections. We once again have a direct flight between Cape Town and Gaborone in Botswana. Other new flights include African destinations such as Addis Ababa, Kigali, Livingston, Luanda, Nairobi, and Victoria Falls. This will further increase tourism numbers for all these cities, and I'm sure lead to even further job creation. We are very fortunate in Cape Town to have all the right ingredients: a scenic coastline, warm and welcoming people, a wide range of high-end and affordable accommodation, and a host of activities to keep tourists and locals entertained. On that note, let me say to all of you, enjoy a wonderful workshop, a wonderful conference, and once again, thank you so much for visiting our beautiful city. I had to take the liberty to sell the city, and I think that is what is required from any mayor to do. And I'm looking forward to doing business with you, even to assist you with buying the necessary property in our beautiful city as well. You are most welcome to do that. Thank you very much.
State agent.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, for that warm welcome. I think we all have heard that it wouldn't be a complete conference if you don't go out and see some of the sides that Cape Town has to offer, the food, the wine. Go up the Table Mountain and enjoy the hospitality that Cape Town and South Africa has to offer. We will move on to, well, before we get to the second speaker, I'm going to open up this discussion. I'll just wait for the presentation to come out on the screen. So, like I said, I'm the CEO of Tourism Business Council. The Tourism Business Council represents the private sector in South Africa. We have many affiliate associations in the council, including SATSA, FEDASA, BASA, ASA, SAVRALA, National Accommodation Association, SACI. I can go on, but we have a limited amount of time. So we represent the interest of the private sector in the tourism space. What we have done is that we have sat down and say, what is it that we can do, between now and 2030? What's our strategy for 2030? All right. Before we get into that, I just want to show you, the size of, tourism within, South Africa. You can see that, direct contribution to GDP is about 136.1 billion. It's about 2.9. We believe that is getting to about 3% or 3.01, somewhere around there into the GDP. But the total contribution, including the value chain, you're looking at around 8.9%. Employment, this is huge. 4.5%, this is the direct contribution. And by the way, do you know that in South Africa, tourism employs more people than mining? In fact, double, the number of people that are employed in mining. So we need to capitalize on that because, most of the time, and I will talk about it, as I get to the next slide, most of the time when we talk about, issues that we want to see resolved, within the tourism space, it takes us a bit of time, but when the mining sector wants to see something resolved, it doesn't take them much time. Why is that? But we'll get into that. Total contribution to employment, about 1.5 million people. This is huge. This is huge. And this is the work that you do. When you go every day, when you put those packages, and I know this happens in other African countries. You can go to Ghana, you can go to Rwanda, Uganda, Kenya. Tourism is important, part of the economy. And we need to be taken that serious because, we are that industry that can survive many different changes in terms of technology and so forth and so on. When you talk about the visitor exports, you can see, the numbers are there. When you go to the investment, you can see that, there's a large number of investments that's coming into South Africa, from tourism. We have done a study that we commissioned at the TBCSA through what we call the PPGI process. This is Public-Private Growth Initiative. This is led by the CEO of Toyota in Africa and Europe, Dr. Johan van Zyl, and Dr. Rolf Meyer, and other members of the society that saw fit that the business sector must participate or must come up with solutions to grow this economy. So as the tourism sector, we said, we need to participate in this. And we went in and we participated in this. We hired some people to crunch the numbers to say, what is it that we can contribute, to this economy? How can we grow this economy? You know that our economy is growing at 1.1%, 1.3 here and there. So it's staggered, and we can't be comfortable with that. So as the tourism industry, we said, what is it that we can do to contribute to the growth of the economy? This is when we went and did this study, and we call it Tourism Growth Strategy by 2030. From the study that we've done, we crunched the numbers, and we realized that we can double the number of tourists coming into South Africa to 21 million. We have about 10.2, 10.4 million tourists that come into this country. We believe we can double that number. And if we double that number, we believe that we can create 2 million additional jobs. So if you look at that, and you say 2 million additional jobs in a country that has about 27, 28% unemployment, well, official unemployment, this is huge. And the potential of tourism has been recognized now, after we did this strategy, by the president of the country, who then took the strategy that we did and extrapolated from that and said at the State of the Nation address that tourism has massive potential. And you quoted these numbers. So this is quite important. And when we really look at these numbers, we look at the scenarios where we said, if we go as business as usual, where are we going to end up in 2030? We will grow, but we're not going to have massive growth. But if we do certain things right, and we target certain markets correctly, and we fine-tune our marketing, we believe that, this is something that we can achieve. So you can see that the targets, that we looked at, and remember, this is born out of, the fact that without private sector, the public sector can go and put budgets and put targets and do all sorts of things. But the private sector, you yourself, are the one who convert. The numbers that we're quoting here are the numbers that you're doing. You convert, someone from interest to being a traveler to your own country. So this is what we have looked at, in these numbers. So we said that, in order to achieve the numbers that we have, in essence, doubling the number of tourists by 2030 to 21 million and creating 2 million additional jobs, we need to focus on 3 things. 1, we need to remove regulatory barriers and other inhibitors. Number 2, grow existing markets. Number 3, let's invest in emerging markets. Now, I'm going to talk about the removing regulatory barriers, and the next speaker is going to talk about the rest of these things. Okay, I'm just going to put them up on the screen, and I'm going to add on this. This is just but some examples. Number 1, we've been talking about issues of visas for quite some time. And this is something that we are raising, with the government departments to make sure that we solve this issue. It's a hot issue. We have met with many different countries that are dealing with the challenges of getting visas in their own countries, especially in countries like China, India, and other African countries. So we're dealing with that. Tourism transport is another issue that tour operators are experiencing. All right, should I wait until those that are leaving to leave? All right. Now I understand. Okay. All right, we're going to continue. So these are the issues of, transport. We all know from the tour operators that there's an issue with issuing of your public transport permits. These are the issues that we're actively dealing with, and these are the issues that we are actively trying to solve, together with the associations, that are dealing with these matters. Issues of safety and security is a big one. We know that, we always have issues about, the safety of tourists that are coming into the country. It's an issue that's on the table. We also have an issue with, that we've raised over the, past few years, issues of, the sharing economy. How do we deal with issues of sharing economy? How do we equalize the playing field? So those are the issues that we are actively dealing with. And these are some of the issues, but the biggest one is the issue of e-visas, the issues of surrounding immigration, children traveling into the country. Those issues are quite important. They are still an inhibitors. And we still have a lot of people that are, have been stopped, at the airport. So to that effect, we've been dealing with the likes of Home Affairs to try to change the situation. And we are hard at work, because to achieve the numbers that we said we want to achieve, we cannot do so if we don't address these issues. We can throw as much money as we can. In conclusion, I just want to mention this. I met with high-end Chinese inbound tour operators. They're coming from China. They were here on a firm trip last week. And there was one person that could not make the trip because we couldn't issue the visa on time. So that is a problem. And that is something that, we continue to raise, with the authorities here in South Africa to say, let us deal with this situation once and for all. There are many countries here in Africa and other, in Asia that have a better visa regime where people can apply and they're guaranteed to get their visas on time. We can't have a situation where people are, buying tickets and then their visa don't get to them on time, and then the ticket is non-refundable. That is unacceptable. And those are the things that we're working on. There are other various regulatory barriers that we're working on to make sure that, they are eased so that we can reach the target that we need to reach. So I'm just giving you this background, and then the rest of the speakers are going to come and talk, on other issues. The next person who's going to talk is none other than Mr. David Frost, the CEO of SATSA, Southern African Tourism Services Association. Make sure that I get that right. Yeah. And he's not stranger to the industry. We all know who he is, and he will take this forward.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm not sure if is that working? Cool. Morning, everybody, and welcome to the sort of presentation. I think just important to emphasize, what we're sharing with you here really is the first take of this overall strategy, and what we're sharing with you is a framework, but the way we see the strategy is very much a living strategy. This is not some document that's going to go into a drawer, keep doors open. This is a living strategy that we are very committed to engaging our public sector partners on with. We need to come up with innovative new ideas. Simply doing the same thing that we've been doing for the last couple of years is not going to give us the growth figures that we are looking at. And if you have a look at particularly the overseas arrivals into South Africa, the forward book doesn't look particularly rosy at the moment. The numbers are not in positive territory. So it's incumbent on us to come up with innovative ideas about how we can actually remedy the situation. And that what we are sharing with you today is the strategy that we will be sharing with our public sector partners, principally South African Tourism. So I chair the TBCSA's marketing committee. It's the formal interface with South African Tourism. And I'm going to talk about the middle block there, which is growing our existing markets. Gillian Saunders will come after me and talk about India and China. But in terms of our overseas arrivals, 77% of those come from North America and Europe. So in terms of getting ourselves out of the dwang that we're in at the moment, that's where we've got to put our efforts in. And we've got to come up with practical, real solutions that will drive growth in the next 18 months. And that's what I'm just going to share with you, some of our ideas around that, and take you through that. So the first one that we are looking at is to do a joint private and public sector roadshow into our top 6 markets. And the aim here is to deal with the ongoing negative perceptions and to actually take these head on, rather than pretending they don't exist. So those are issues around the lingering issues around water, land issues, safety and security, and possibly, just to actually deal with it straight up, the energy issues at the moment. But we would then meet with media, we would meet with trade people. But what we have said is that in addition to doing that, what we should also do is use it as a sales opportunity. And this is something that we believe has not taken place in a coherent way up to now. Let's identify our top 10 operators in each of those markets and go in and have a very, very hard-hitting conversation with the CEO of the travel group, not the junior product manager that sells South Africa, the CEO. And the conversation is a simple one. How can we get your business to grow at 10% to South Africa over the next 5 years? Now, there might not be easy solutions, but I think there would be interesting ideas put on the table. And if you do that with your top 10 customers in your top 6 markets, that's 60 conversations with interesting ideas that will help us catalyze growth. And the reason you do it with your top guys is that catalyzes growth that hopefully then cascades into the rest of the market. Now, the second pillar that we're talking about is, it's our opinion that up to now we have not sufficiently synergized both the public's resources and the private sector's resources. SA Tourism has quite a large budget, and I think it does quite a good job with the money that it has. But the important point is the private sector spend is probably 10 times SA Tourism's. Just an example, there's a grouping that's coalesced recently of hotels and lodges called the Sales Forum. They have about 13 constituent groups that join them. Their conservative estimate of their spend just on those 13 companies is 207 million. So just extrapolate that across the entire inbound private sector. There's a lot of money being spent, and what we haven't done is synergized that with our public sector colleagues in SA Tourism. So practically, how do we do this? What we're saying is, let's take our top 10 markets, let's get into a room, let's have the SAT team in the room, and we will, as the TBCSA, will bring our top 10 players in that market. And it's a very simple discussion. This is what we haven't been doing. What we sometimes get from SAT is an historical retrospective about what they did in the last year. That time is gone. That time is gone, and it's of no interest to my members. What my members are interested in is, what does the future look like? So it's a simple discussion. In the UK, what is the SAT budget, and what is the plan for the next 3 years? Let's start with that. Then let's take the top 10 minds from the private sector, and for a day, let's interrogate, let's workshop, let's come up with innovative ideas, and at the end of the day, we walk out with a common strategy that we can communicate to the whole inbound sector within South Africa. So that's our second pillar. The third one is to set up in our top 3 markets of Germany, the UK, and the States, advisory groups. This would be about a 12-person group of senior tourism players, airline CEOs, possibly CEOs of big tourism groups, perhaps top travel writers in those groups. And the idea then is to actually cascade that down. Sorry, let me get back there. Is to cascade that down to establish what we would call high-level influencers in those markets that can actually spread the word about the positive stories that South Africa has to talk about. And that cascades into trade and investment as well. And now, sorry, I did a little voorskot there. My big ponytail idea, because you can see how long my ponytail is in order to try and, we've got a perception issue in this, in terms of how South Africa is perceived overseas. So we have high awareness, but there's a massive fall-off to conversion. And what we've never done in any coherent way is put a proper, above-the-line, sexy campaign that says South Africa's a cool place to come to. The Aussies did this 20 years ago with Crocodile Dundee. They've just repeated it with the Son of Crocodile Dundee ad that was flighted in the States, and their numbers are up 10% out of the States. We've never had a Crocodile Dundee, but now we've got him. He's Trevor Noah. He's international currency. He speaks German. And he never did national service, but now's the time. So he's got a treya on, you know, and I think we could do amazing stuff. But that's a big, hairy, audacious idea, but it's doable, guys, and I think we should be looking at it. And then what we're saying is, let's look at some tactical campaigns that we can do in particular areas. High awareness, low conversion. But what we really do is we under-promise and we over-deliver. So those of you in the industry will know, once we get people here, they're absolute converts. They go away, and they not only do they bring people back with them, but they come back many times. So we need a program that speaks to repeater travelers. How do we focus on this? How do we unlock that side of it? Then we've got the millennials. Of overseas arrivals, 36% are between the ages of 18 and 34. These are intrepid people. They're not as susceptible to perception issues. They also, if we get them in that age thing, they'll come back 6 times. It's nice to get the retired dudes who've got money and everything else, but they'll come and have a holiday here, and then we might not see them again because they might not be around for much longer. And then we've got the special interest segment, and just briefly in that, there are a number of issues. We've got things like adventure tourism we need to unlock, huge potential, golf tourism. We've got the mice issue. We've got the LGBT market. We've got issues like language schools. These are low-hanging fruit that we can go and do some cost-effective tactical campaigns in and really unlock growth, unlock growth in those particular sort of segments. So, guys, just my short and sharp input into it. But what I just want to say to you is, if you've got ideas, come to us. This is a living strategy. If things work, we'll do more of them. If things don't work, we take it out and put something in that does work. But the important thing is we've got to do things differently. And I can say this safely because I'm in the Western Cape. We can't be like the Blue Bulls. We can't have plan A, and then if it doesn't work, we just do plan A a bit harder. And then we move to plan A again. So we've got to think differently, guys. And that's what we've come up with. So we look forward to our interface with our SA Tourism colleagues. And we're doing this in a transparent way so everybody has a sense of what the strategy is. There's no secrets here. We think there's some good ideas in it, and we look forward to driving it forward. I'm going to hand over to Gillian Saunders, who's been part of the TBCSA team, to talk about the emerging markets of India and China. Thank you.
Thanks. So good morning, everybody. It's really great to be up here. For those of you who might have studied your program, I just have a disclaimer, because in the program it does say advisor to the Minister of Tourism, which I do. I do advise the Minister of Tourism, but he's at liberty to take my advice or leave it. I'm actually an independent advisor, and hence I also worked with the TBCSA. And when Chief said somebody crunched the numbers, I crunched the numbers. So that 21 million came out of my spreadsheet, as did the 2 million additional jobs. So I'm going to talk a little bit about why those numbers are doable. What we've heard from Chief is the regulatory challenges, which are immediate. It's low-hanging fruit if we fix those. And what we've heard from David is we need to take action in our core markets. The Americas, Europe, the Australasias, we're not seeing good uptake in bookings at the moment. We've had a lot of challenges. But that's not going to get us to 21 million by 2030. So how are we going to do that? Let me just see my slides. Okay, so I'm supposed to click to that and then click to Insights on Markets. So it's building on me. I don't know who's going to build. But that little graph that came up there, that is your Americas and Europe. We are not ignoring these in the 2030 strategy. It's vital that we carry on driving good growth out of those markets. But here we have the graph of how we see the growth in 3 new major target market areas. The one that starts higher is actually African air arrivals. So if you're from Africa and you live in Ghana, or you live in Nigeria, or you live in Nairobi, in Kenya, or wherever, typically your aspirational, and perhaps I'm not talking for everybody, but often the aspirational destinations are in Europe. It's Paris, it's London, it's New York. Do you know there is nothing wrong with Joburg and Cape Town? Aspirational destinations for Africans should be down here. I don't think we're putting the product right. I think we have issues, if it comes up there, no, it's gone. Okay, let's go back one. We have issues with air connectivity, issues with visas, and a whole range of reasons we don't really target our African compatriots on the continent to come down here. So that we see as growing fairly reasonably from a higher base on an ongoing basis, if we get that right. Those other 2 lines are China and India. They start at exactly the same place, and you can see within a few years they start to grow exceptionally fast. When you get things right for China and India, they are huge markets, and I'm going to talk a bit more about them. But we're not saying tomorrow we're going to double the Chinese market, but we're saying over a period of 12 years, if we do things right, we can grow this market. So a little bit about China. When I did this work last year, in 2017, the number of outbound tourists from China was 131 million. The preliminary numbers for 2018 are 162 million, guys. In 1 year, they saw that type of outbound growth. Why? Because Chinese are starting to take an uptake in tourism from a mature market. They've done a lot of traveling in groups. They've done a lot of traveling as young people. They've done the sort of photo stop, start, quick budget tour. They're now maturing. There's a lot more FITs. There's a lot more self-drive. There's a lot more experiential experiential experiences they're looking for. Do you know that Chinese are nearly the biggest consumers of tourism to the Antarctic? Do you know that there's a massive Chinese self-drive business going into many destinations where they've got their GPSs in Mandarin for them? So that's the type of experience that Africa and South Africa can offer the Chinese. So we see huge potential growth there. That 162 million that left China last year on holiday is projected to grow to at least 300 million, and some say 400 million by 2030. We currently get less than 0.7 of a percent, 0.07 of a percent, sorry, of the Chinese outbound market. We have 97 or 95,000. It's growing a little bit at the moment. Australia is already on 1.4 million. Australia had a serious China-ready strategy that they've rolled out over different periods and different years. Australia's own China-ready strategy in 2011 forecast that they get to 1.4 million by 2020, and they got there already in 2017. So we need to do 2/3 of what Australia does, or even 100% of what Australia does, to target this market. And we believe, and this is the big hairy goal, and we're putting it up as a big hairy goal because you have to do a China-ready strategy. And unless you say that's where I can go if I do all of this, we're not going to get the investment in what we need to do to drive China. So what do we need to do to drive China? Sorry, there are the numbers, and we don't need to go into a lot of detail. We are projecting, therefore, that of a conservative China outbound growth, by 2030, we want 0.65% of that market. Still below 1%, okay? Still below Australia's where they would be in 2030, but certainly doable for South Africa. We know there's a lot of things you have to address for this market. We have to look at language with an E on the end. Both signage, spoken language, we need, in Australia, Mandarin is the first learned second language across the board. And people talk Mandarin everywhere. So we don't need fancy Mandarin, but when you have a waitress or a receptionist or somebody who's driving you in the car, if they can have conversational Mandarin with you, it's going to help. And signage. We need our accommodation to be Chinese ready. We need more airlift, which hopefully we'll start getting earlier rather than later, and we need to work on that. We need the food and the cuisine looked at. We need payment methods. We are behind the curve technically in terms of payment methods and how the Chinese market pays. And we need to get our marketing and communication right for that market. And we need to do it smart. We're never going to have the budget of Australia. Australia did research into Chinese outbound tourism in 600 cities in China in order to put an actual presence into 40 cities in China. So that's the type of massive approach they had. We probably won't do it to that level. But what I can say is the Minister of Tourism has already taken up this in a way as a challenge, and he's been working with a few of us in the industry already. We sat down last week to debate how we do these 6 things to get ready for the Chinese market. So we're working on it, and we're hoping to get some big plans out there. Then we have the Indian market. Also, 25 million outbound people from India in 2017. The UN WTO says that's going to double to 50 million in 2 years. By 2020, it's going to be 50 million. India is on our doorstep, guys. If people thought Australia was close to China, so they got an advantage, which, by the way, is overstated. There's a little advantage. It's not that big. India is much closer to us. We speak the same language. They all speak English. We have cultural affinity, much more cultural affinity. So we actually see India as the equivalent for us as China was for Australia. We need to get close to this market. Massive growing middle class, massive youth travelers, and we get a very, very small 0.3% of that market. So we are expecting, and we hope that we will get to over 1% of this market. Remember, we're saying India's special to us. We've got special affinity. It's easier to target this market. So we want to get over 1% of the outbound Indian projections by 2030. And that would give us about 1.25 million, 1.6 million Indian arrivals. So those are the 2 big hairy goals. I've talked briefly about the African market as well. Whichever way you look at it, this is a growing market. Won't go into the detail, but if you look, there's depending on whose numbers you use, between 29 million and 78 million upper class people in Africa, and between 34 million and 65 million upper middle class in Africa on our doorstep. Of those, 35 million are in 10 key cities. What does that mean? It's easy to target those people in these 10 key cities, whether it's marketing, whether it's airlift, whatever it is. If we get our product right, we should be able to grow the market out of Africa. As I said, we should be the aspirational destination on the continent. So the targets are possible, and we checked it with the industry. We spoke to people in aviation. We went through access plans for expansions. We know the Cape Town airport's going to expand. Yes, we will need to do more. Our runway capacity and our things like that are better than our terminal capacity, so we'll need to increase our airport capacity. But when you talk to AXA, they have plans for airports like Port Elizabeth that can help to target markets that are coming from the east. So nobody said, no, you're smoking stuff, you can't do this, okay, when they looked at the overall numbers. Same with the hotels. We sat down with a bunch of the hotel groups. We crunched the numbers, and it came out with about just over 900 hotels we would need in addition to our current hotel base by 2030. And we sort of looked at that, and we then said, well, actually, historically, in a 14-year period, 1994 to 2018, we added more than 1,000 new hotels. This isn't the only accommodations. Assumers will use other types of accommodation as well. And we have some innovative ideas in the strategy. We're talking about industrial development zones, or SCZs, which would get special tax dispensations and special infrastructure and zoning and licensing support, as they do in government for manufacturing. And this goes to what Tshif says, is manufacturing says they need something, they get it. When tourism says they need something, we don't always get it. We're floating this idea of IDZs or SEZs to support growth and product development in tourism. And we're using Sun City as an example. Funnily enough, it wasn't an IDZ, but it got a lot of special tax dispensations from the Botswana's government, as well as the casino license. And Sun City now employs, or it's thought to be responsible for employment for about 10,000 people in what might otherwise have been an impoverished area, as well as lots and lots of businesses and SMEs support Sun City. So we're trying to look at that as a way to stimulate product development. So we've already spoken to many of these areas, but the strategy is comprehensive. The two we didn't mention so far, so I'll just touch on them, is there's a domestic growth strategy in this strategy as well. I'm not going to go into in detail, but I firmly believe that growing domestic tourism is incredibly important for sustainability of tourism in our country, and we also need to look at transformation in our industry. That is also vitally important for sustaining an acceptable, inclusive tourism industry in South Africa. And then lastly, I want to just talk to why tourism. And for all of us here who are in this industry, whether we're outbound in core markets, whether we're destinations in other continents or destinations in Africa, and I think other countries do this better than us, we need to start saying about the jobs we create in tourism. Chief has mentioned those numbers. In a country that has high unemployment, the job creation ability of tourism itself as a high job creator, with a long and deep supply chain that has a knock-on effect for jobs, is vitally important. And in countries like ours, this is for youth employment, it is low-skilled to high-skilled, and it is rural. It's dispersed across the entire country, so you get your geographic job creation. It's a foreign exchange industry. We are actually an export industry, and some other countries often use the word visitor exports or visitor export services. We don't often speak that way. Do you know what? We actually import consumers. It's a really clever way to grow your economy. We import consumers, and they do their spending here. We mustn't forget that. We stimulate incredible linkages. In our country, policy is always about stimulating manufacturing, stimulating agriculture. You need demand for that. Tourism can drive demand into manufacturing. Think of the buses and the cars and the linen and the crockery and the food manufacturing. And then agriculture. I would love to have a statistic like how many eggs does Sun City consume in a year? And how many farms and chicken farms that keeps going? Because I think we forget, and a lot of people don't understand that their job in a factory or their job on a farm, they have that job because of tourism. And if we could get people to understand that, they would be better supporters of tourism. Of course, tourism helps you with your global positioning of your country. It helps you with cultural understanding and integration, something the world needs and something South Africa needs. And one of the other reasons domestic tourism is important. And lastly, it's one of those where small interventions can have a huge effect. We sincerely believe, and I think pretty much everybody we talk to believes, if we could just put a decent e-visa system in, we would grow a lot of our markets straight away. China, India, Nigeria all need visas. Kenya, Ghana all need visas to come here. And it's nightmares for those people. So as somebody, oh, it's gone. Oops, no, it's gone, sorry. There was a saying that Mark Twain said about travel is, it kills bigotry, prejudice, and other things like that. And I think in our world today, we need to see travel as a force for good, travel and tourism as a force for good in each country. Managed correctly, it can deliver amazing things, and we mustn't forget that. And all of us in this industry, wherever we come from, if we can remember the power of good of travel, the job creation, the linkages, etc., that's how we sell it, and that's how we sell it to our governments, and that's how we would believe that we'll get the support and the public-private partnership going that we need in South Africa. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And the next speaker is, I want to pronounce this correctly, Kwadwo. There you go. The Chief Executive of Ghana Tourism Development Company. Thank you, sir.
Actually, you were maybe 70% close. Given what I heard at first, I think that's a remarkable improvement. Thank you. And I think I am happy about the decision perhaps to skip the PowerPoint presentation, because then I suspected we'll run the risk of repeating a lot of what has been said and the strategy. So what I'm trying to do will be to have a conversation and try and weave through what I've heard and then narrow in on what Ghana is doing specifically. Indeed, a lot has been said about things like visas. And some of our colleagues who were coming with could not make it on this trip because they were not able to secure their visas. This includes officials from states, some of our tour operators, trade partners, quite a number. And definitely that's something that once identified, and if it's worked on, would help with South Africa's tourism. It's a problem we have, or we had, but we have done quite a bit about that. Ghana in general, understanding that, yes, there's demand out there for tourism, decided as a national strategy to focus on domestic tourism. When we took our top 3 sites, Cape Coast Castle, the Elmina, the Kakum National Park, realized that about 70% of all the people visiting these sites were Ghanaians. But we had not put much focus on them in terms of how to attract more of Ghanaians coming to these sites. And so we launched a project in the beginning of 2 years ago called See Ghana, Eat Ghana, Wear Ghana, Feel Ghana. It became a good song that we sang. We produced a very beautiful song out of that. Over time, fast forward 2 years, we've seen the numbers to our tourist sites from Ghanaians grow by not less than 30% in 2 years. And so for us, it became something informing that whilst we look at attracting, top dollar from wherever it is, it was important to also focus on what we have or the people we have locally and did not focus too much on. We also moved aggressively towards marketing. Ghana tried to sell itself out there, and I'm sure you would have read on the news some of the rich reviews we got. For instance, CNN listing Ghana as the 4th most attractive destination to visit last year in 2018 to 2019. We got reviews from BBC and Al Jazeera and all the rest. And these came out of a very aggressive campaign to put Ghana out as a destination. Some of it came from our efforts working with WTM Cape Town partners. Indeed, when we looked at some of the numbers also coming into the country inbound, every time we've participated in any platform, any fair, any exhibition, any conference, we try to look at the immediate response. And we realized that, of course, apart from what our biggest markets are, just like Cape Town in this case, our biggest markets is the US, followed by London, the UK, and then the rest of Europe. You classify them as the rest of Europe. Germany follows, Holland, and then the rest. When we look at these numbers in terms of visitations to all these countries, last year and last 2 years, our visit to Cape Town, in terms of the numbers we saw, suggested that there's growth, following from participants who came to participate in WTM Cape Town directly. And these are some of the results we got from some of our tour operators. Of course, like I'm saying, next to our biggest market, in this case, WTM London or, say, the US. So in terms of strategy, for us, it was important to pay attention to some of these markets directly. What did we have to do then? Ghana today, whilst we embark on this aggressive marketing, realize that the biggest challenge we have is in tourism infrastructure. We were doing a lot in marketing, but there's a gap. In some of our attractions, there are basic things that you'd want to see if you go to a very good tourist attraction. Some of them are just sanitary in nature, but did not exist. The government therefore embarked on a strategy to try and put these things in place. We've done quite a lot. But in terms of the sites themselves, they are raw in their nature, in their form. We've got to add value to some of these sites. And so we have started that. The other things people travel for. And whereas they want to see our nature, which is our biggest sell, whereas they want to see our sites, whereas they want to see our castles and our flora and fauna, we realize that some also want to see iconic structures or things that make, become an identity, as it were, for the nation. The way you would look at the Eiffel Tower, and straight away Paris comes to mind, or the way the Statue of Liberty or the Empire State Building makes you think of New York, or the way the Big Ben defines London. Ghana, in terms of strategy, decided we needed to toe that line as well and develop a certain icon. The biggest icon in terms of our strategy, therefore, came out of what God has given us, which has been used by others beneficially, and that's the Greenwich line. Ghana, going forward in terms of strategy, in the next 2 to 10 years, when we launch this strategy by middle of this year, will be positioned as the center of the world. Scientifically so also, because at the point of interjection where the meridian crosses the equator at 0.0 degrees, Ghana is the closest habitable land anywhere in the world. It therefore gives us reason to make that claim that in our marketing cell, as we move forward, we position ourselves as the center of the world. Indeed, in terms of flight arrangements, we are about 6 to 8 hours average to most of the destinations from where we are. It's 5.5 hours coming here to South Africa. It's about 8 hours going to Dubai, 6 hours to London, to Paris. So we are right there. And that's part of the strategy we are putting out going forward. And so even in developing our infrastructure plan, we have therefore decided to work on the line and to develop some icons on the line that will market in terms of attraction to the world in general. One of them will be the development of a modern golf resort that exists. There's a golf resort today that exists, but it's not very developed. But once it's done, hole 7 holds the line. It will be good to tell the world today we have a PG-accredited course with all the modern facilities, a modern golf resort. Come and play golf in the center of the world. There's an old Presbyterian church on the line, and religious tourism for us as Africans is huge. We have a Presbyterian church today that sits on the line sometimes, not sometimes, on weekends, between the hours of 5 and 10 p.m. You will find hundreds of people praying on this imaginary line, and we believe that God is there. Why not? It is not our place to challenge it. There are people who have told us they have gone to pray on the line, and they have received answers to their prayers. They have gotten twins. They've gotten business contracts. We believe them. Ours is to see what we can do infrastructure-wise to make that a tourist cell or a tourist attraction. So in terms of investment and strategy going forward, that's one of the things that we are also doing. We've also recently opened the new airport, new international airport, and that immediately has increased traffic inbound, whether for business, whether for leisure, whether for sports. We have seen some remarkable jump in the numbers. 2 years ago, we were doing an average of about 1 million visitors. Fast forward 2 years, we are doing an average now of 1.2. This year, with the growth we have seen so far, month on month, the projection is that we are going to do about 1.6 million. That, again, gives us hope. And so we're just opening up in terms of strategy to announce. If you're looking for partnership, also if you're looking for an area where you can invest, we have launched a series of incentives. The idea for Ghana today is not the immediate gratification in terms of money, but it is the opportunity we can provide for partnerships. And so whether it is incentives, whether they are moratoriums, we can give everything that is available in the book. We will certainly provide that. The last thing I'll talk about is Ghana this year launched what we call the Year of Return. His Excellency, the President of the Republic, sometime in September last year, addressed the U.S. Congress and later the Congressional Black Caucus to launch what the 400th year of slavery, when the first blacks were transported to the shores of America. And so fast forward from 1619 to 2019, 400 years, we've decided to make this an iconic celebration to look at the African resilience. It's not looking at any negative stories of who did what. It's just celebrating the African resilience. And once we launched that also, we have seen some big interest, especially coming from the Caribbean and the diaspora in general. We are putting some effort in that as well to grow the numbers that are coming into Ghana. So in terms of interest, also, as part of the strategy based on what I have just heard, perhaps when I go back, the discussion will not be to look at the strategy. The meeting will talk about how we can go ahead of Cape Town in attracting the Chinese market. The Chinese market is huge for us. A year ago, many years back, until last year, we had a very huge Chinese interest in Ghana, and this was mainly informed by mining. They were in there for purposes of mining, I dare say illegal mining for some of them, not everybody. Now, during this period, I chair the duty-free operations at the airport, the company that runs the duty-free operations. And our flagship product that was selling normally was perfumes or fragrances in general. Once we got the Chinese coming in, tobacco jumped to #1 and gave us 10 times the revenue we were making from fragrances. And so for us as business people, as government, that's an interest we know we needed to keep. Although the activities was hampering the environment and therefore government banned all forms of mining, now we are looking at how to get them to come back with responsible mining, with alternatives to mining, using things like the government's flagship One District, One Factory project, which is looking at setting up factories in every locality, turning raw material into finished products, adding value for purposes of import and for consumption, so that these things become exciting to them. We have seen the numbers coming back again. So in terms of the China strategy, China market, whilst we look at America, whilst we look at Europe, whilst we look at London, we are also having to focus on the Chinese market because the evidence is there that it will help us. So these are just by way of thoughts, and we'll be open to our further discussion on whatever opportunities there are for tourism partnership in Ghana in general. Thank you.
Yeah.
Right, thank you so much for your patience. We're going to be real quick. Congrats to our friends from West Africa. I think like the rest of the African continent, tourism is booming. As you know, World Travel Market Africa is a show for the entire African continent. And I think it's really encouraging that we're seeing these success stories coming out of it. A platform such as World Travel Market Africa is so important for our economy specifically, and of course for the rest of the continent. But last year alone, we had over $400 million worth of business that was actually concluded at the show. And I think that really just is indicative of the success of an event and how much business it can generate. We've got over 1,000 international buyers. We are a serious business show, which is unfortunately why some people have had to leave for their appointments. But I think in terms of the collaboration that we have with our stakeholders, with our partners, and with the 1,000 buyers that have come from all over the world representing 70 countries, I think it just augurs well for, I think, tourism generally. I'm really here to just sort of close and just to welcome everybody, obviously, to the event. We've got 3 exciting days ahead of us. We have lots of, obviously, exhibitors, over 660 exhibitors from all over Africa, the Indian Ocean Islands. Please go visit the show, go and talk to these exhibitors. Go and have a look at all the content sessions. We have over 200 speakers. We have Inspire Theatre, Destination Theatre. We are an inbound and an outbound show. There's so much content happening. We've got the Responsible Tourism Awards this evening. We've got the inaugural African Tourism Investment Summit. I think that's quite a groundbreaking event, again, for our tourism industry. That's happening tomorrow and Friday. And we've also got Speed Network on both days between exhibitors and buyers. We've got the Travel Forward Tourism Conference, so a technology conference on Friday, and then there's the launch of the African Tourism Board tomorrow. So if I haven't already exhausted you, there's a lot to do in 3 days. So please really enjoy the show. And I think make good connections, enjoy the South African hospitality and the Cape Town hospitality and African hospitality. We have festivals this afternoon, so all of the African countries and Indian Ocean Islands are going to be obviously hosting festivals on their stands. So really exciting stuff, really good educational, really good content, and we really want you to do some really good business and just enjoy the event. We have a quick little video, and I mean quick. It's our announcement from our perspective, and I'll let the video speak for itself. But otherwise, thank you very much indeed for your support. Really appreciate it. So as you can see, we're absolutely delighted to announce that we'll be bringing the World Travel Market Africa Awards to Cape Town next year for the first year. Very exciting. So if you want to obviously enter, you can get all the information from the team or go straight onto the website. Outside, we've got some Q&A desks, I think, for members of the media, if you want to come and have a chat to any of the panel members, if you can indulge us for 2 minutes. So thanks again, and enjoy the show.
So thank you, everyone, for coming through, and we hope that you have fruitful engagements and enjoy WTM. Thank you very much.